Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Mr. Riderola with a presentation on the physical regions of North America. In this presentation, we'll look at North America's geographic regions. We will also look at major waterways in North America. Our objectives for this unit are following. We're going to identify and analyze the physical regions and waterways of North America. We'll demonstrate understanding by using a video presentation, this presentation, to complete a Google Forms. I suggest having the Google Forms and the presentation split screened so you can see the presentation on one side and respond to the prompts on the other side. The prompts are in the order of the video. Let's begin. How about the physical regions, right? What is physical geography? In this case, we're going to look at elevations and land features. Lower elevations are often shown on maps in greens and light green. Higher elevations in browns, tans, and yellows. And of course, bodies of water and waterways are in blue. This map is a good example of that. If you look at the key at the bottom of the map, you can see that there are flat plains, smooth plains, irregular plains, escarpments, low hills and hills, breaks, foothills, low mountains, and then high mountains and deep canyons. The United States has a rather diverse geography, so you can find elements of this from east to west. You'll notice here we have some flat plains along the eastern seaboard near the Atlantic Ocean. As you head westward, you have those low hills and breaks of the Appalachians. And as you head west, you have those high mountains and deep canyons of the Rocky Mountains. North America can be broken up into 8 major regions. The coastal plains, the Appalachian Highlands, the Canadian Shield, the interior lowlands, the Great Plains, the Rocky Mountains, Basin and Range, and the Coastal Range. For the most part, when I provided this presentation, we're trying to go from east to west. So hey, let's begin in the east. Keep in mind, we'll also look at major waterways as we go along. That'll be the last thing we look at toward the end. The coastal plains, the Gulf Atlantic Coastal Plain. That's what it's also known as. Well, what are the features of this? It stretches from New England to the Gulf of Mexico, so it's a very large area. It's the lowlands along the Atlantic coast, along Florida and the Gulf of Mexico. There are many bays and safe harbors here. Port cities are established very early on. Boston, New York, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., Hampton Roads, Charleston, Savannah, Tampa, and New Orleans. Excellent fertile farmlands in this region, as we'll find out when we study colonial America. Rich soils with a good climate. If you've ever been down to the Jersey Shore, you have a good idea what the coastal plains are like. The second region is the Appalachian Highlands. These formed over billions of years, but they're old. They've eroded down through rain and tectonic plate movements. There are a range of mountains. Today, the highest are only about 6,000 feet, which those are not large mountains. They have rounded peaks. There are thick forests in these regions. They range from Maine to Georgia. Different sections exist. You have in Vermont, you have the Green Mountains. New York, you have the Adirondacks and the Catskills. You have the Blue Ridge Mountains in Virginia. And New York and Tennessee, you have the Great Smoky Mountains, which is pictured above. The Great Smoky Mountains are a beautiful region. The New Jersey also has a piece of these known as the Skylands. In fact, if you've ever seen signs for the Skylands, that's why. That's what they call the mountain ranges in western New Jersey, where we live right now. Next, the Canadian Shield. And you'll see this stretches right up into Canada, all the way up to the pole. It's a rocky glacial region with frigid winters. The southern portions that are part of the United States include Lake Superior, portions of upper Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, and believe it or not, northern New York. Glaciers carved out many lakes, riverbeds, ponds within this region. In fact, even when you look around New Jersey, even though we're not part of the Canadian Shield, you can see how glaciers have carved out the different lakes, rivers, and streams in our own area. So as you head further up into upstate New York, you'll notice this is also true. Lots of small lakes, lots of streams, lots of ponds, and the reason why is these glaciers that had once had come down from the poles, they had scraped through the land, and when they retreated, they also pulled that soil back up with them. And what you have is the Canadian Shield. We're heading west into the interior lowlands. These are rolling flat lands, excellent for farming. The Great Lakes are there. Some of the major river systems that make up the United States are here, and their tributaries, the Mississippi River, the Ohio River, the Missouri River. Some of these we'll talk about later. They provide easy access for trade. Lands are good for corn, wheat, and dairy farming. This region would play an important role in the United States as we began to settle west. One danger in this region, and you probably know this from the news, is it's known as Tornado Alley. They're subject to many tornadoes. It's flat land. It's easy for tornadoes to form. So often when you hear in the spring and the fall, mostly the spring, it's subject to these really dangerous tornadoes in this region. Moving further west to the Great Plains, these are flat open grasslands. Once open prairie. Bison once roamed in this region, millions of them at one time, large herds. They ate the prairie grass, and they would scatter. It would look like ants spread out across the prairie. There were so many of them at one time. However, today, wheat production is important in this region. In fact, this is known as the breadbasket of the United States. Plains rise slowly into rocky hills, and these rocky hills will eventually become the Rocky Mountains. So as you head further west into the Great Plains, the terrain starts to become more rocky. It starts to elevate higher until you actually reach the Rocky Mountains, which is our next region. Now, geologically, the Rocky Mountains are new. It's from plate movements of the North American plate hitting the Pacific plate. It raised up these mountains. They're high, they're steep, they're rugged. Some are as high as 17,000 feet. So the Appalachian Mountains seem dwarfed when you compare them to the Rocky Mountains. They stretch north to south from Alaska through Canada into New Mexico. They are majestic, some incredible views. I tried to put some pictures here to show you. If you've been out west, you are well aware of how incredible these mountains are. The Rocky Mountains also includes what's called the Continental Divide. This is a division in the mountains, and it impacts the watershed east and west. Any river east of the divide runs east toward the Great Plains. Any river west of the divide runs west toward the Pacific coast. Heading even further west, you come to the Basin and Range region. Here there are some low valleys and deserts between the Rockies and the Sierra Nevada mountains. Plateaus, rugged mountains. There's little rain here. It's very arid and dry most of the year. This region also includes the Great Salt Lake in Utah. Death Valley also exists in this region. It's the lowest point on Earth. And here's a great view of Death Valley. Keep in mind, in the ancient past, this entire region, especially the southern portion of it, was actually an inland ocean that existed in North America. That ocean has since dried up. It no longer exists. But if you went down to the Death Valley, you could actually find like things like clams and shells that you would find at the bottom of an ocean sea. So, or ocean or sea. So it's pretty amazing that at one time this was actually an ocean. Coyotes, jackrabbits, rattlesnakes are the main animals within this region. Finally, the coastal range. This is from the Cascades to the Sierra Nevada. They're the mountains of the west coast, and many of these mountains dip right into cliffs, right into the Pacific Ocean. There are some fertile foothills and valleys in between. The Great Sequoia or Redwood Forest exists in this region. And Napa Valley, which is known as wine country, is also part of this region. That wraps up the regions of North America. Let's take a look at some of the bodies of water and rivers. We'll start with the Great Lakes, a group of 5 freshwater lakes of central North America between the United States and Canada. Includes Lake Superior, Huron, Erie, Ontario, and Michigan. French traders first sighted the lakes in the early 17th century. Today, the Great Lakes connect the Midwestern ports with the Atlantic Ocean via the St. Lawrence Seaway. And here is that St. Lawrence River, or St. Lawrence Seaway, and this connects the interior lowlands and the Great Lakes to the Atlantic Ocean. Now, this is important for trade, and we'll talk a lot about this when we talk about the French and Indian War, because the French did control interior parts of America, but control of that region was dependent upon control of the St. Lawrence River. Should they lose control of the St. Lawrence River, they lose control of the region. So when we start talking about the French and Indian War, we will come back to this topic. How about some of the other interior rivers of importance? Let's start with the Hudson River. The Hudson River served as a major transport route from New England to the Middle Colonies, later the Middle States, to New York City. It was the main transport hub for both New England and the Middle States. Controlling the Hudson River allowed you to control not only did it allow you to divide New England and control it, it also gave you access to the Middle Colonies or the Middle States as well. So early in our history, the Hudson River played an important role. In the Revolutionary War, the Hudson River will play an important role. Later in American history, as the United States expanded further west, they built the Erie Canal. And the Erie Canal connected the Hudson River, that important river in the east, with Lake Erie. And what this allowed, the Erie Canal allowed the Hudson River to connect with the Great Lakes and the Midwest. So it created basically a trade route, a single trade route to the Midwest. This allowed the goods from the outside world to be easily transported to the Midwest, and for Midwestern goods to connect with the outside world via the Hudson River. So it connected those interior markets with markets on the East Coast. And this, of course, promoted a lot of trade. And this is actually one of the reasons why New York becomes known as the Empire State, because it becomes a center of all this trade taking place not just on the East Coast, but in the Midwest as well. How about some other rivers, like the Ohio, the Tennessee, and of course the Mississippi River? You'll notice that the Ohio River and Tennessee rivers are tributaries of the Mississippi. And once again, I have to bring this up, as the United States expands west, the Ohio and Tennessee rivers become important trade routes. They lead all the way out to the Mississippi River. And what's the big deal of the Mississippi River? Goods can be taken down the Mississippi River to the port of New Orleans. And of course, New Orleans opened up trade with the rest of the world. You left the Gulf of Mexico, and that allowed you to go out to the Atlantic Ocean and trade not only with the East Coast, but other parts of the world. This made these two rivers extremely important to American history. And we will talk about the Ohio River when we talk about the French and Indian War. Finally, the Mississippi River. I mean, this is a really important river. I don't know if we'll talk about it in our curriculum this year, but it's certainly an important part of what's known as the Louisiana Purchase later on. And this is a critical river in the early development of the United States. The river was a major transport route in America for centuries, perhaps even before the arrival of Europeans. It's a good chance many Native American cultures prior to the arrival, the pre-Columbian cultures, actually use this river as well. Starts in Minnesota and flows nearly 2,320 miles into the Gulf of Mexico. Major cities are along the Mississippi River: St. Paul, St. Louis. St. Louis is famous for its Gateway Arch, which symbolized the exploration and expansion of America west. St. Louis is on the Mississippi. It was a gateway or starting point for many pioneers and explorers who went and settled the West, and you certainly learn about that next year in 7th grade. Memphis is along the Mississippi, And finally, New Orleans, which was important to trade routes with the outside world. Hey, that's it. We're going to wrap up. There should be a reflection ticket built into the assignment itself. So remember to answer, choose one of the three to respond below. Which region would you most like to visit? Which region would you most like to avoid? Or what do you think is the most important waterway in the United States? Choose one of those and answer for your reflection ticket. And that wraps up this presentation. And good luck, and do a good job, and have a nice day.